Welcome back to the Denver Sports Betting Show. I am your host, Taylor Sadusky, and this special segment is brought to you by our partners over at Fandom Nation, not only showcasing you the best elements of all the sports, but we are building communities and showcasing it to you guys, the fan. With that being said, another amazing guest in the studio with me. We have the Fitted Nuggets fan to the left of me right here. First and foremost, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on, Taylor.
No, of course. Happy to have you. He is in high demand, so this is an exclusive interview we get to have, so be excited, you guys. With that being said, too, we got to get into our first sponsor of the segment. We have Gardner Roofing. Are you looking for a roofer you can trust? Gardner Roofing is Colorado's expert roofing team, family owned and proudly serving the community since 1998. Gardner Roofing, they don't just build roofs, they build relationships with unmatched craftsmanship, honest pricing, and a team that treats you just like family. There's no wonder their customers keep coming back and bringing families with them. If your roof needs some love and you just want some advice you can trust, visit them at gardnerroofs.com or give them a call today at 303-332-6224. Our family has your family covered. With that being said, last week we did talk the Buffs, NFL, and the team being reconstructed under Deion Sanders, but we are switching gears yet again. We have the Fitted Nuggets fan on deck. So who else are we going to talk besides the Nuggets? So with that being said, just go through and give me your take on the season. What did you see from this last season that the Nuggets had post, Michael Malone, everything?
Yeah, I mean, this past season was a little difficult for the Nuggets team. I think we saw them struggle throughout the entire season, whether it was injury or on defense. We saw Jamal Murray out for a significant amount of time, 23 games. Aaron Gordon kind of following that same suit, missing a significant amount of time. So Aaron Gordon really didn't get into final form until we saw him during the playoffs. Obviously, he's a big impact during the playoff period. Jamal Murray actually ended up averaging his highest points per game as an individual. MPJ actually had one of his best individualistic seasons, but I think that's all a microcosm of the bigger problem, which was lack of bench depth. We saw that kind of as an issue, even though we kind of got the lottery going with Russell Westbrook, averaging 13 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 6 assists per game at $3 million a year. I mean, that's about as good as you can possibly ask for from a bench unit player. But the rest of the bench just wasn't there. And what I really was disappointed in the team was just the lack of moves. Obviously, the ownership felt the same way when we moved on from Calvin Booth and Mike Malone. I personally feel like even though as things have started to come out that should have been done much earlier. We first heard about issues arising, according to Josh himself.
Around All-Star Weekend almost, it seemed like.
Well, even before then. He said he had first noticed issues back in Thanksgiving of 2023. Wow. So fresh off a championship, he said he had started to notice that there was some pettiness happening between Calvin Booth and Mike Malone. And, as I think it started to spill over into the team a lot more throughout the year. But personally, I think Booth should have been moved a little bit sooner. But I'm also disappointed in Mike Malone for getting that way. He didn't want to play certain players because Calvin Booth liked them. And whether or not that was beneficial to the team, it just shouldn't have ever been involved in the actual players themselves. And so a bit of a disappointment there. I've been really proud of Adelman and how he stepped up to the plate. I mean, seeing how far he was able to take the team, especially against now a title contending team that's in the actual finals. We'll see how that all ends out. But for him to be able to take it to 7 games, arguably never being in that seat before, was nothing short of impressive. So while there was a lot of negatives in the season, I think it is a lot of growing pains that needed to happen. I'm, again, still very disappointed that Mike Malone had to go, but I think ultimately in the long term, this will help the team reach that next level. So I think what we need to see this offseason is, all right, we made those moves. Now we really need to commit. If that's what they want to do as a team, we've got to really see that commitment from them.
Mm-hmm. What moves are they able to make coming up here soon? Because you mentioned needing that bench depth. They had more of that with that championship season and expanding that rotation. But what is it more that they need specifically when it comes to, on contrast to what that 2023 season was?
Yeah, I think they're just going to need a lot more team play. I think that's one thing that could potentially happen with the absence of Russell Westbrook. He tends to command the ball quite a bit off the bench. So we're going to really need to see that bench play well together and share the ball. I think nowadays, especially what we're seeing from teams that win are the ones that are willing to pass the ball the most. And that was one of the biggest things that stood out to the Nuggets during that 2023 season. So there's a lot of moves that can be made. I think the first and foremost move that needs to happen is a confident GM needs to be signed. Right now, I have a big fear that Kroenke is going to be moving forward with the interim GM. There have been no rumors of any types of GMs that have been interviewed or even called or even talked about. So to me, that's a bit of a concern when we're already this late in the postseason. Any of the targets that they'd be looking at aren't necessarily already working for other teams. So I think that that's something that needs to be addressed right away. We're going into the draft now, which we don't necessarily have any picks, but we don't have a GM in place. We have an interim GM. So for me, that's the number one thing that needs to happen. That's got to be the starter, because we can't really move on to any of the other moves until that happens. So we hire the new GM, ideally somebody in the same league as Bob Myers, who's just a vet, who's got every NBA team's phone number in his phone already. He knows the other staff members. He knows the organizations, and he's going to be able to make those phone calls. Whether or not Bob Myers is a realistic target remains to be seen. He's said that he's not coming back to the NBA at this point. So we'll see. I would just like somebody of that caliber who's just been around the league long enough to have those contacts, who can make the deals, who's not going to need to be brought up to speed or learn his job, and can just be thrown into the situation that he's in, because they've got to hit the ground running. I mean, we've got to make some moves quickly this offseason if we've got any hope of competing next year.
Very significant moves for sure. And you did mention Russell Westbrook and where he's going to end up. He did deny that player option and whatnot. There has been talks of him going to Europe with like these $50 million contracts. Like, where do you see him landing in this offseason?
With him declining the player option for next season, there are several things that could happen. I think one of the biggest ones would be a potential reunion with the Thunder. He did just sign on to be an advisor for one of their major constructions that they're doing for their stadium over there in Oklahoma. So I could definitely see him returning back to the Thunder. The crowd loves him over there. I mean, he's very well respected in that community. So I think that would be a good fit for him overall. The Nuggets community seems pretty split whether or not they liked him. I overall was a fan of Russell Westbrook. He was productive. He had positive win share. All the stats point to him being a positive impact. But whether or not he will remain to be seen. I think he's gone, and we've got to kind of move on from him. But as far as his potential move, I think if it's for the money, he's got to go with the EuroLeague. Whether or not that rumor is true, at 3 years, $150 million contract's pretty significant. So if you're not going to try and ring chase, which, is the theory of why he joined the Nuggets in the first place, which, makes sense. But I think overall for him, that would be the move. I mean, why deny $50 million a year to go and be essentially the guy for a European league and reach a whole new fan base of players who probably already really look up to you and respect you, and a fan base that is obsessed with somebody like Russell Westbrook? I mean, what's not to like about him, especially if he's playing as the main source of play? He's electric, he's fun to watch. And so I think that would be beneficial for him. And obviously money's great too.
Mm-hmm. Gotta love that. He was given a standing ovation, during the finals run with the OKC too as well. So that was you could just electrify what he does too as well. And let's take a short break real quick here to introduce our next sponsor, Nico Stones. Nico Stones is one of the best accessories you can have to your wardrobe too, as well as I'm sure jewelry makes the outfit.
Oh yeah,
good stuff. As you see, a little nice piece of jewelry on his neck right there.
The only one I'll wear.
Gotta love that. But with that being said, if you are looking to elevate your everyday style, Nico Stones gives timeless, versatile jewelry that stands out. Whether you're dressing it up or keeping it casual, from bold rings to leather bracelets, there is something for every single vibe. Go ahead and tap the link in the description to explore the whole collection. There are such great pieces and something for absolutely everyone. With that being said, jewelry out the way. Gotta love it. Good pieces here and there.
Yeah, you're all swagged out in it.
Thank you. Little Nuggets t-shirt.
Yeah.
Prepare for the vibes too as well.
For the gold.
The golden days, But with that being said too, we have missing key components both offensively and defensively. Where are we going to fill in these gaps? What players stand out to you in terms of what can we accomplish, from other teams that we can grab either in the trade or in the draft? What does that look like to you?
Yeah, I think the best thing that's going for the Nuggets right now is Nikola Jokic plays on the team. And I think that becomes an extremely attractive destination for players who are particularly looking to rejuvenate their career or go to a team where they'll be utilized more. So I think that their goal is going to be to target underrated players, because as we all know, it's going to be kind of difficult to trade some of the pieces that we're with. I think right now everybody's favorite to trade would be MPJ, and unfortunately I don't necessarily want to lose him. I mean, he produced 19 points per game on 45% from field and 40% from three. That is an extremely effective player. Then you couple that with 7.5 rebounds per game. That's a pretty impressive stat line. So that's somebody that we should be able to trade for some decent assets. And I think that, unfortunately, just with how Calvin Booth decided to sign certain players to certain levels of contracts, it puts us in this situation where we have to give up somebody that we don't necessarily want to. But without bench depth, it's a problem that has to be addressed. The league is deeper than ever now because what's happened with the new tax aprons that exist is you can't necessarily pay everybody big money. And the tax aprons got introduced pretty much right after the Nuggets won the championship. So it's created this whole new structure to how teams are built, essentially. And that's why you see teams like the Thunder who are just super deep. They've got one superstar, one kind of fringe all-star. I mean, Williams has really proven that he is definitely an all-star, but somebody who's still early on in his career. So they're running on a lot of cheap contracts overall. That's kind of the main point for the Thunder right now. And you see that with the Pacers as well. It's just a lot of guys who can get the job done. So with somebody like Nikola Jokic, especially, who's able to enhance the players around him, our goal would be to trade MPJ for underrated assets, players who have not meshed well with the team that they're currently on, that will play well with teams like us. One team that jumps out for me in particular is the Heat. This isn't necessarily the players I would like hand select, but out of what we could potentially get for a player like MPJ, that remains one of the best trade targets because they have a lot of restructure that they want to go through right now. They just moved on from Jimmy Butler. They don't necessarily have direction that they're going in. Tyler Hero obviously is producing well, but he's not necessarily a franchise cornerstone. So they're going to be looking to restructure that team and hopefully, mix things up a little bit. But I would see Andrew Wiggins and Jamie Jacuz coming over here. And I think that those two players, specifically Jamie, because he had a really good rookie season. Potentially, he was in the top running for Rookie of the Year. He looked phenomenal on the Heat. And then this past year, for whatever reason, I'm not sure what has happened behind the scenes, but they've just kind of gone away from using him. So that would be a player I would particularly really like because that comes with a lot of upside. That would be a great player to have off the bench who could potentially start if he needs to. And then Andrew Wiggins is good on both sides of the court. Now, he is removed from his all-star days, but we would get somebody who could ideally nearly replace an MPJ, but add a defensive edge to the whole situation, which is what we need a little bit more than we need the offense. Because again, with Jokic, you almost have to assume people are going to play better around him. So if you insert him into the starting lineup, especially somebody like Andrew Wiggins, who flourishes as a third option like he did on the Warriors, I think we would see a pretty big boost from a player like that. Now, whether or not the Heat are going to be willing to make that trade, I think that's why it's so important to get a really good GM, because they're going to be the ones who have to sell that trade to another team. And like I just read off MPJ's stat line, like I don't see how that's not attractive to another organization.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely a lot of numbers there too as well. And then even thinking like draftability and like the draft coming up too, there's been pre-workouts with Caleb Love, Umar Ballo. Like we have big guys, we have point guards, all that kind of stuff too. Who would the Nuggets benefit from picking up out of the draft this year, would you say?
Well, considering the Nuggets don't really have any draft picks in this year's draft, it's going to be kind of tough. We have to really hope that certain people just don't get drafted. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really what they're trying to target, is some people who may kind of go under the radar. So that's going to be our theme for this offseason, is underrated pickups. And we're going to have to be very strategic about who we go after. And ideally, if we do make some of the wrong picks, unfortunately, like last year when the trade deadline came and went and no moves were made, when it was pretty obvious we needed something different, I hope that the new GM and coach are going to be able to work through that and make necessary trades throughout the year, because it's not going to be an exact science. We're going to make mistakes. Sarge was very evident of that. Sarge is a great offensive player, but just did not mesh well with what they were trying to do. They were trying to play him at center, and it just wasn't working out. And then we also have Deron Holmes coming back this season, coming off an Achilles injury. And we kind of talked about that off camera.
His rookie season,
yeah. It's going to be his rookie season officially. He showed out really well in summer league. He played very well in college. Somebody who got a lot of blocks, a lot of rebounds, not necessarily a huge piece on the offensive end, but definitely a spark plug, high flyer kind of dunker. So that's somebody who could really help that bench out, because I think personally, if Deron Holmes had played this year, we could potentially be looking at the finals instead of the Thunder, because that was really just about how little we were missing off the bench. So it's not a huge task that we have underneath us, but with the loss of Russell Westbrook and then just the overlooming GM situation, it's definitely a task at hand. And I think Bruce Brown, who's now run his course on his, expensive contract that he just had for the past 2 years at $20 million a year, which we could not afford, he may want to come back at whatever we can pay him. And he is, I mean, he hasn't even been subtle about wanting to come back. I mean, he posts the Denver Nuggets all the time. I mean, he won a championship with us.
It's on him forever, basically.
Tattoos. Yeah, exactly. He's still wearing all his Western wear. And he played very well with the Nuggets and unfortunately just did not produce well on other teams. So I think that that's evident for him as well. And Denver loved Bruce. So I think a reunion with Bruce Brown is definitely in the horizon. I think that would be our most ideal replacement for Russell Westbrook with the situation we're in.
I completely agree. Well, thank you again for your time today. I really appreciate it. This has been the Fitted Nuggets fan here on set with me. Thank you guys again for tuning in. This has been the Denver Sports Betting Show in partnership with Fan Day Nation, and we will catch you guys next week. Bye.